there's simply no time. I've got to get all these plants planted out before next Thursday, or my world will come crashing down, so I must get on. Hello everyone, nothing like a bit of drama to start a video, but that is essentially the drama that every year, and you can go back through my YouTube journey, go back through internet forums and then email news groups back in the 80s, even down to garden club level when I was a kid. Everyone at this time of the year is so eager and keen to get seeds sown, to get them growing. They must do well, they must get on, and they must do X, Y and Z before a certain date. And then the plants must come out and they must get down to the allotment or down to the veg patch and get planted. It's so much excitement, so much things, you know. Plants in the ground, then what's it going to do? To just sit there, watch it? I don't understand this, I never have done. There are certain things with plants that you've got to take into account, and one of them, the chief factor, and the one thing that none of us can predict for, is the weather. Now, we all have forecasted weather, but this is all based on models. So for the last 40, 50 years, let's say, the Gulf Stream has been measured and monitored, and everything about it has been recorded. So when it's in a particular shape, a computer will be able to model that Gulf Stream and have a rough, and I do mean a rough idea of what's going on. And then they couple that with weather systems and how they interact with each other. So you might have a low pressure and a high pressure on the Gulf Stream coming down like so. And going on past experience, and it can be as little as 2 or 3 past experiences. The weather on the ground is based on those 3 factors and those 3 things interaction, the low and high pressure and the Gulf Stream, over a particular or given area, and how that went in particular past times. What this does then is that the computer then will give you a forecast, and it is just that, it's a forecast. It's not a cast iron guarantee of what the weather will be, it's just a rough idea of what that computer actually thinks it could be. And that's subject to variance. As I said, it could have many iterations of that information. It may have 50 or 60 examples of that, but it could have as little as 2 or 3. So the accuracy is not generally there, and the weather guide and the weather forecast is more of an approximation to give you a rough idea of what the weather may or may not be doing. And then the next day, that model will change as another weather pattern comes into view, and how that will react on the 2 weather patterns we've already got and the Gulf Stream. Then the computer starts to spit out its information again, and it can totally change and be varied. But where it comes of a concern to the gardener, particularly at this time of year, we're in sort of mid-April, gardeners are desperate to get their plants out. They want to get them out, and I still don't understand why it's so desperate to get them out. But they'll go by that weather, which is the right thing to do. But I go by the weather, by my own senses, and by my own local weather, and by temperatures and things I've recorded myself, and things that I can put into place to utilise all the information that's available to me, and then further protect before I'll start reacting and start planting things. But there is no rush, and if somebody out there has got a reason for this rush, please do comment underneath. If you're a little bit uneasy about leaving a comment underneath, you think you might get attacked or trolled by someone, then please do email me, because I would love to understand what this big rush is at this time of the year. So please do email me and let me know, and I can have a think about it really. But let's move on, and I'll show you what I do. So this is one of my hot boxes, and I use it in various places around the plot. It's essentially a small greenhouse, or a small polytunnel if you like. It's not so much a tunnel, but it is what it is. It's protected by plastic, and I've got broad beans under there that are protected for now, but later on this will move into the polytunnel and we'll go in there now and have a further chat. So as gardeners, we're constantly trying to cheat the system, and the more experience you have, the more time you've spent gardening, the more you can understand about how you can cheat that system. The hot box, for example, if I fetched it in here, which I do, and I grow when my tomatoes come from home, they go in the hot box, because I know that will give me an extra degree or two of heat in there overnight, while the temperature's still getting warmer and warmer in general outside as we head into more of the late spring, early summer scenario. Now I know this big polytunnel here, this is huge, so overnight there is about a degree and a half or 2 degrees of difference in this tunnel warmer than it is outside at night, simply because of the sheer volume that's warmed up during the day, and it takes that long for it to cool down overnight. And by sort of 5 o'clock in the morning at the moment, the sun will rise way up over my shoulder over there and instantly start to warm it up. So it's only a very small amount of time that the frost and the cold needs to keep off this, because the daily sunshine will re-warm it up. Added to the fact, as I say, if I put my hot box in here and put my tomatoes in there, they will be further warmed, so we're looking at a combined total of around 3.5 degrees warmer inside here, protected from outside. So this gives me a bit of lateral movement with the temperatures at this time of the year. Now, it's often mooted and stated that around 10 degrees is a safe time, is the safest, lowest temperature that you want the majority of your warmer weather plants, things like your tomatoes and cucumbers, those sort of things. So you aim for that 10 degrees. If we go back to the computer models I talked about earlier, if they are off by 2 degrees and your lowest temperature for that day is stated at 10 degrees, it could be 8 degrees. And that could be at the point that your plant now shuts down and it now spends another couple of weeks trying to reinvigorate itself, to get itself going again. Those 2 or 3 weeks, the weather will definitely warm up a hell of a lot at this time of year, and it will get it going, but it won't have the same vigour as it did before you brought it down here. I use these plants down here as an example. These are the plants that over the past months I've trained to grow the roots. These plants are actively growing roots because of the way I've grown them. So they've got that vigour, they've got that pep and that urge to grow. If I bring them down and put them into cold weather, it's going to stop that, and they've then got to gather that momentum again. It probably won't gather that same momentum as those plants have now if they get a dose of cold. So it's all about protection all the way through of what you're doing. And if you think about it, many gardeners, myself included, early January, even as late as late December, have started seeds and we're growing them, and we've spent a lot of time and a lot of care to get those plants to a young seedling state. And now you want to, with this big rush thing I keep mentioning, fetch them down to somewhere where the temperature's possibly too cold and you want to throw all that hard work in a dustbin. So don't do it. Now, all the information's out there for you. On the back of a seed packet, it will generally say plant out after all risk of frost is past. So what is the frost date? You can go and search on the internet last frost dates for your area and you'll find a chart. But again, this is standard modelling behaviour of previous years for as long as it's been recorded. Sometimes for some smaller areas there might not be a lot of information, sometimes there's too much. But using your best guess, using your last frost dates and the temperatures that they achieved that you'll see on that graph, using the information you know about your local environment, i.e. for me it's my polytunnel and my hot box and what temperatures I can gain by placing plants in here, you can then decide as to when it's safe for you in your particular area to go ahead and bring your plants out of the protected environments they've been in for the last couple of months. Now, a good example of that is I am approximately a quarter of a mile from my home. I'm down the bottom of a hill. There's a river down the bottom there, right at the bottom of the hill here, and I live at the top of the hill right up there, no more than a quarter of a mile away. But at any one time through the winter, it's more often 1.5 degrees or 2 degrees colder down here than it is at the top of the hill. So that's another piece of information I can put into the puzzle. I also know that way off over my shoulder is the start of the Cumbrian Fells, and about 6 miles that way, it's about 6 miles either way, 6 miles that way is the sea. We get forecast for the coast, and we get forecast for in the fells. This bit here isn't forecast for, but the temperature between the two, even though there's only 12 miles between them, is so varied that you've got to get a gauge of your local weather in comparison to what is forecast and what actually happens in all reality. So having a thermometer, a min-max thermometer if you want, to measure the actual daily outdoor temperatures and your daily indoor temperatures in your polytunnel or greenhouse or your cold frame will greatly enhance that information, and that takes years. 2 or 3 years you'll have a good idea and a good plan to move forward for. So many people come and ask me at this time of year, when can I plant my tomatoes out? And I'll say, well, when the temperature is right and when the weather is right. It's using all that information, gaining that knowledge over a couple of years to get your own computer model together, and that's vitally important. And please, if anyone knows what this rush thing is about, please do let me know. Now, it's so vitally important that you get this weather thing right, otherwise you can stop your plants and you'll be waiting much longer for your plants to recover and get going again, and they may never have that same vigour as they had at the start. Waiting another week or two will do you far more good than it will planting them early, so do bear that in mind. Don't be in such a rush to get them going. I know my weather here is different from 150 yards up there at the top of our site, where it goes uphill a bit. The weather's totally different up there than it is right here. You've got to assess that. Get yourself a diary, write the daily weather down, write how your plants perform and when you planted them, and over a period of 3, 4, 5 years you get a much better understanding of what's going on in your locality for you in your garden, and that will be much better for you and paint a better picture that you can understand much easier. So there we go, that's it for today. Look after yourselves everyone, and I'll see you all very soon. Ta-ra now.